everybody. Welcome back to Let's Talk About the Real Shit podcast. You got your host, Naomi Sue, in the house, and her partner in crime, Lori Hatch.
Hey, world. Hey, Pete.
We are still practicing social distancing, so we will continue to broadcast our podcast through Skype. And we actually have Ozzie Gonzalez back in the house with us for part 2 of talking about where he's at with running for mayor for Portland. So say hi, Ozzie.
Hello to the peeps as well.
We're super stoked to have you back. We basically brought Ozzie back in because we didn't feel like we were able to dig a little bit deeper in how you feel about how you can make change for Portland as a community, which, you know, obviously ultimately could ripple effect into other communities. And so today we're going to focus on some more details of how you feel about certain things. But before we get started, guys, as we usually like to do, we like to start our podcast with some sort of thought of the day. And actually, Ozzie today was the one who brought up the key word for the day, which is inclusion. So we're gonna start talking about inclusion and what that means for all of us right now, and what we're kind of dealing with the pandemic that is currently happening. So Lori, do you have anything to share about the keyword inclusion?
Inclusion in this world that we're living in right now. I think, to me, it means really taking a look around us to find the positive in whatever circumstance we're in, and especially to find the positive in people that we're around. I'm kind of on a journey of self-reflection, and I'm enjoying the solitude, to be quite honest. It feels like a break for me, and it's giving me a lot of time to look inward. And in that looking inward, it's also helping me to look outward and see things through a different lens, a different perspective, and that includes people. So I guess it's just kind of including everybody as the human that they are, instead of judging the book by the cover, I guess.
Yeah, I can understand that. It actually taps into how I'm feeling even today. So with everything that's going on, I personally have been self-isolating now for about a week longer than when it was the trend to do so. So I'm about a week ahead of everybody, and I was looking at the weather report, and I knew this week was going to be a little gloomier. Now I know Portland wasn't the only place that wasn't sunny, so there's other places where it's snowing and like the weather is terrible still. So it doesn't necessarily help with everybody's moods right now, and I was very worried about how everybody was going to be feeling this week. I'm a huge empath, and I just think about where everybody's at. I have people who are, have server jobs that have lost their jobs, that I have engineers that are, worried about, not making money as well. So we've got all kinds of different classes, different kinds of people freaking out because it's starting to sink in a little bit. So, as far as inclusion goes, with my thought with where everybody's at right now we do have the ability and the capability to start connecting via video and video. We can dance. We've been doing DJ radio shows streaming online on Friday nights, which has been super fun. There's so much happening, and we actually have the time to start connecting with people that we haven't in a long time. And also, we have the time to start doing our homework as far as the up-and-coming election, for example. Right, Ozzie?
That's right.
I mean, So, like, I've been thinking about it with you, especially running for office right now. And for the first time, you had no idea that this was going to be happening, that we were going to be in a pandemic, going from the coronavirus into the new election. So, I mean, this is the time for people to look into who's running for election and to actually take action and to make change. So, kind of to go along with Lori's thought originally, I feel personally for you, yes, you've had that time to reflect within, but there's a lot of people that are just freaking out right now. So I feel like there's a time for the leaders that are more spiritually awakened, that see the bigger picture, to rise up. Because as a society, people do need to follow something, and if it makes sense to them, because you know what? The reality is things will be different. How are we going to make things different? Because we actually have the chance to make things different. So it's time to start doing our homework and including people, and we can do it on the internet. It's not the end of the world.
So, Ozzie, what's your feelings on inclusion? It was your word. Share.
Well, thanks. Thanks a lot, Lori. Well, I'll build off of what you guys bring to this conversation, because, Lori, I really liked what you said about the visibility aspect and seeing and including by being able to just be able to see that bigger picture. So it's including everybody. And I'd say, like, it's looking at the whole ecosystem. And it's not just the ecosystem of humanity, but the whole ecosystem of how humanity's connected to all of the other life support systems that we might not realize affect us, like how the honeybees are really how we get a lot of our fruit. And so that visibility aspect is really powerful. And I really like, Naomi, your concept around empathy. As an empath, I think that's important. And I think that inclusion has a big fat dollop of empathy inside of it, because we have to have that ability to, I think for inclusion to work, you have to be willing and able to empathize for other perspectives. And that's where inclusion gets really exciting to me. But I want to add one dimension to this for inclusion. I use this a lot when I'm working with groups that are really trying to address inclusion and diversity in their work environments or their organizational environments. And it's about curiosity. There's this aspect of inclusion that is yes, you see them, yes, you feel them, but there's also the genuine interest aspect, the one where you want to learn more about them or understand a little bit why or how, because that's the piece of inclusion that brings you to the table as someone who is ready to both learn and teach and be included. And so I think that's one of the pieces of inclusion that is really powerful to me. And on the flip side of inclusion, the table, an inclusive table, is one where nobody's invited by somebody else, but where everybody has a space to invite themselves and to learn from others. That, I think, is the inclusive table that we speak about, but we haven't quite put our finger on how to achieve it. And I think the reason we don't achieve it is because it's not the job of the leaders to achieve the inclusion of others. It's the job of the leaders to realize it's not their job to be doing the including. It's their they should feel included just as everyone else to be able to contribute to something and have others contribute. It's about setting the right table for everyone. So that to me is the curiosity aspect is the dimension that makes it something you want to do.
I love that, Ozzie. That is awesome.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you guys on that for sure. Let's talk a little bit more about what you see for the future of Portland and running for mayor.
Well, so much. That's a pretty open canvas there. I see us hungry for something different. I see us very much aware of the fact that we are struggling. I see us very much frustrated with the direction we've been going of late. And I see us ambulating as though we really weren't sure what the next step should be. And so there's a huge need for leadership and clarity at this moment. That's what I see. And as far as where we are now, what I see, what motivates me to step into this moment and put myself in this place of running for the loudest podium in the city is because through all of that fog, what I see is a city that is going to live up to that aspiration of being a global model of what livability, sustainability, and equity looks like in a functioning city. And I think that it's within our reach, but we have to overcome our own selves, our own distrust, and our own aversion to change that is really getting in the way. So that's what I see that is needed right now. And it's what I feel motivates me most to come out and scream that message to say, we can get there. We just have to sit down at the table with people that we think don't like us or we don't think we like, and recognize that they actually want that too.
Right. So when you're talking about sitting at this table with the other people, so as a mayor, do you sit at a table with the governor, with the county commissioners? Like, what team force is running a city right now who has control of making these changes?
Sure. Well, the governance structure of the city is made up of the mayor and the 4 city council seats. They are the 5 votes that essentially establish policy and budget in the city. Everything around that is the implementation arm of the city agency. That's the bureau directors and all of the program directors and the folks that are taking the policy and the budget and the staff and doing the thing. And the way we're set up right now, funny enough, you asked that question at the time when the city's talking a lot about changing the governance structure. Because the way we're set up right now, there is a lot of dilution of power within the city. And what ends up happening, where we are today, is a lot of disconnectedness between all of the city bureaus. They all run as individual organizations by this bureau directors, and the city council and the mayor's seats will be policy-making votes that may or may not pass policy, because as we're seeing in government right now, there's so much bickering and so much stalemating and so much player hating that policies end up becoming like political tools that just get used and tossed back and forth for so long that things don't get done other than the posturing, and so that's one aspect of what's happening now. So that's how I would answer that question.
I actually see that a lot. It's funny that you bring that up because that's how it just feels in the city, observing it from a driver's perspective. So it feels like everybody has the right intent on trying to make this a better city, but they're not. All these organizations are just focusing on their one thing and they're not pulling it together. That's what it seems like from my perspective in the city, because I feel like we're teetering on that line of, wow, this could be an awesome city, to, wow, we could completely fail.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like it's a pretty clear yet, what word am I looking for? Gosh, Ozzie, it's just such a big vision to bring leaders together that can all see the bigger picture and leave their egos at the door at the same time. Right.
You know what's crazy is when I talk about a zero waste city, a net zero energy, a carbon neutral or carbon positive city. I think a lot of times it falls on ears that think it's a little bit like big and visionary, like I'm selling snake oil, and it might sound crazy, but the wild part to me is that I'm not. If any of those things that I'm talking about, we're not even the first city, not only to say it, we wouldn't be the first city to do it. There's already cities doing this. And there's already cities in the US that have established zero waste goals and carbon-free goals. There's already places much larger than Portland that have been able to show they can offset their emissions in a big, big way. So we're not even the first in the pack to start talking about this. I mean, I'm like, this is a late message in the game. And on top of that, the background of my career in the last 15 years has been in helping some of those other places that are now leapfrogging us to do those things. And I'm just like here in Portland going, you guys, like you should really see what's going on around the corner. It's pretty awesome.
So what are some of those things, Ozzie? What are some of the things that the other cities are leapfrogging us on?
Well, for example, Pittsburgh has already thrown the gauntlet down in the U.S. to be a zero waste city. They were a city that Pittsburgh is a similar size in Portland. They're also a bridge city. They straddle a river. There's a lot of DNA of the two cities that is kind of similar. They were both born in the industrial era. Pittsburgh being more of a steel town, aluminum, obviously Portland a wood town. And they both went through this boom and crash cycle through the industrial age. And whereas Portland has shifted into a more small business, leaning on just Intel and Nike as far sort of the regional job centers. There's this other ecosystem built around them. This has been done more of an ad hoc. We have followed Intel and followed Nike through a process of them deciding to set up shop. And now we have a fantastic design in sports apparel. We have a fantastic tech and software solutions industry here in the region. But Portland and Multnomah County never really said, this is what we're going to do. Pittsburgh, however, said, we're going to become a hub for artificial intelligence innovation. And so they took a pipeline from their K through 12 into all the way up to the Carnegie Mellon and the universities programs. And they started up a pipeline for robotics and artificial intelligence curriculum. And of course, they partnered with the Ubers and the tech industries that have now set up headquarters there to create places where this is the testing ground for a lot of the innovation. And it's now created a similar sort of renaissance of the city, shifting its job structures towards tech and towards innovation. They are the testing city for driverless vehicles today. And it's creating a lot of jobs, frankly, a lot of jobs that are kind of taking us towards the future. But the difference in this tale of two cities is that Pittsburgh went about doing that intentionally. They selected a series of industries and a specific focus areas that they were uniquely suited for, or that they thought they were well positioned to take to the next level. And they said, this is how we're going to do something that's bringing our city back. Because unlike Portland, Pittsburgh didn't have a TV show about it that was really selling how kind of neat it was to be there and how you don't really have to do much and you could just kind of be there. And so it didn't have the same sort of enjoyment of a natural growth just for the cool factor. They had to attract businesses, they had to attract jobs and attract young people. So it was a more deliberate, intentional thing. That's one example. When you go even bigger, international, now we're talking about places that are having to manage waste because they never had the infrastructure. And so they have to contain themselves much more. And they've created, there's places like just in the outskirts in the United Arab Emirates that have created zero waste contained cities that are already processing waste. We have opportunities here to process our organic waste in Oregon that is all coming from all of our agriculture industry and our forestry sectors. And just the biomass alone from the state of Oregon is more than enough to supply the entire state's energy needs, and we would be a net energy exporter. That's with the biomass that is already being essentially put into our pipeline today, but it's not being used to convert to usable energy. It's, compost, it's some of it's fertilizer, some of it gets into piles. It gets used in one way or another, but those benefits, a lot of those assets are not being taken to the optimum resource. So those sorts of looking at your industry sector and putting it into a production pipeline and jobs and partnering with your educational pipeline so that you've got people moving in that direction, that's what we're not doing that other places are doing. And it's why we're in a place where we are today, where we're in a pandemic and we don't even produce respirators and masks within our region. So we're sitting here in a bidding war to find stuff that's produced from far, far away. And it's just because we set ourselves up to not really think about what we produce locally, what we're set up to produce locally, and how do we leverage that. And that's the kind of thinking that I'm accustomed to being a part of when I've been a consultant to governments when they're trying to do these big, bold things. So having a Portland address, doing that the whole time, just leaves me with this question: why aren't we doing this here? Why aren't our leaders thinking about it this way? Why are we so busy talking about our Heisman Trophy that we won in high school, that we were the first to be recycling before school, and yet we're not talking about the fact that 90% of the things that go into our blue bins today are getting shipped across the ocean and then getting shipped back because Asia stopped sorting our trash. Those are the things that drive me nuts, that make me want to say, give me that podium. We got to talk, Portland, because we're proud of the wrong things, and we really need to move into the next age with a little bit of humility, so that we can take this on and work together.
Do you find right now, Ozzie, in this specific time running for office, it's coming up soon, and being in the middle of a pandemic right now, do you think that this is a better opportunity for that kind of change to be possible? Because people are going to be looking towards different ways of just kind of doing everything, I think, at this point, right? Like even our daily interaction with people will be different. Do you think that this time is actually kind of good timing for you to be fighting for what you're fighting for in office?
You know, I see it like there's no better time because even though we're in this pandemic moment, we have seen our leadership react to these issues and not be proactive in any of it. And the city at large is really interested in getting its act together. We're all at this moment of frustration that I don't know anyone in Portland has felt before. So I believe that if there's ever that roll of the dice moment where we're going to be ready for change, it comes preceded by this level of frustration that is here right now. So if it's not now, then when would it be where we are really interested and see it clearly that we've got to change?
I agree with you 100%. I believe that this is a crucial time for us as a society to awaken to change in even our daily routines. I mean, we got to get better at a lot of things. This is bringing new awareness to not just germs and our interaction with people, but it's bringing up the changes in the planet because of less pollution. So this is definitely a good time, I think, for real change, which is why we're having you on again today, because we want people to understand who's running for office right now, because we like you want to see some serious change happen, not just in our community, but around the world, because we can be a good example for other cities if we can make it work here. And like you said, you're right. There's other places who have been doing it much longer than we have. So it's definitely time for us to get on board. But that kind of leads into a question that I had for you, Ozzie, which is I think a question on a lot of people's minds is, here we are now in this moment. We're kind of just barely tapping into the quarantine level of stay-at-home order. I personally have family in Italy right now, and my father-in-law actually just got stopped by the police the other day for just walking his dog to the dog park, so they can't even walk their dog very far in Italy right now. So we're not quite there in the U.S., but it's a possibility that could happen. So I think the question is, for everybody's mind right now is, we're here in this moment now. How do we come out of this? And as somebody who's running for office in Portland, what do you see? How do you see us coming out of this? What would be on the other side?
Well, we've got to come out of this smarter, humbler, and more resilient. There is no ifs, buts about this. We have been the living systems, the non-human part of this planet is giving us no choice right now but to stop what we're doing, settle down, and figure out what's important. And that's not that we're getting that message loud and clear right now. So the smart thing to do is to come out of this with a better sense for how much we are vulnerable to a livable planet. What we're experiencing right now is only more likely to occur in a more volatile climate scenario, because we are starting to melt polar ice caps that are freeing little bubbles of gas that have microorganisms that we have never interacted with on the planet. So I don't mean to freak us out, but what I mean to say by all of this is we are experiencing the fact that we do not run the show. For as much as we are, on top of our science, we have fantastic innovation and internet and hospitals and amazing machinery and virtual reality. We're still part of the living system. We're still a biological organism. And this blue marble that we live on it's got a range of possibilities that we can exist under. And we're messing with that range in our own actions. So we have to be very clear about how taking care of our planet, as well as taking care of our bodies and our immune systems, are both parts of becoming resilient. And that takes us right back to our food system, our healthcare system. We realize that if we don't have universal healthcare, all of a sudden a pandemic is bad for a rich person just trying to order a pizza or whatever rich people do. I don't know. I think everybody likes pizza and tacos. I think. I say it's those sorts of vulnerabilities that we see. The fact that not everybody has healthcare, and if somebody is sick, they could have opened a door or, I don't know, touched an iPad at an iStore. And all of a sudden, I might, with my great health insurance or whatever, be subject to a virus that has no known cure, that may or may not, my insurance may or may not be able to do diddly squat for me. That's real. That's real. I'd say this is one of those moments that's showing us that we really are vulnerable species on planet Earth. This is we are in the age, the sixth age of mass extinction. I'm not sure that's not really getting a lot of airplay right now, but there have been 5 mass extinctions in the history of planet Earth over its hundreds of million years timeline. We are in one right now, and it's the 6th one. And we are a species that's able to talk about it to one another, but we're not sure what our story is like at the end of this. And that's the kind of resilience that we need to be prepared for. We are in a fantastically agile species. We did not get, as invasive species, we're pretty darn good. We're up there and among the more successful ones. And it's driven because we are so well wired for survival. We are so adapted. We've been able to develop things that adapt the world to us. Yet we are still vulnerable. So we have to be able to reconcile our ability to influence the planet with our dependence on the planet to be able to take care of our needs, which it already does without us having to influence it.
Yeah, and I think that this is a good time. Right now we're in such a unique time going into the elections too. We've got the time right now to study up on who's running for what, and we have to be more open to change. Things are going to be different from here on out, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. People are always fearful of the unknown, and they always react in the moment when they're fearful. So we just have to remember that a lot of times when we get through that dark period, the light comes out at the end there, and we will prevail and we'll come back together again. So not to change the subject, guys, but I know that we wanted to kind of go into a few questions for you tonight, Ozzie. We wanted to see how you feel about a few things since we've got about a half hour left. So Lori, do you have a question for him?
Well, one of the things that is on the mind of people a lot, always, but I think it's kind of on our minds right now too, is our houseless population that lives in Portland. And one thing this virus has taught all of us, or at least I hope it's a lesson that we learn, is this thing is non-discriminate. It doesn't care where you live. It doesn't care how much money you have. It doesn't care what your religion is or your skin color or your age. I think it's really helped. I loved your word humble, Ozzie, because I think if everybody really takes a look at this, coronavirus has humbled us to look at we're all even prey for this entity, and the homeless population, since they have more of a struggle to shelter in place or have a safe haven, I know this disease and it can spread like wildfire once it gets started. So Other than COVID, what's kind of your plan or your vision to deal with that population here in Portland?
Sure. Thank you for asking. I don't often get more than 60 seconds to say anything about this. I have a clear idea that what we have right now is a problem of too many reasons that people can fall through the grates of society and lose that housing stability. Way too many reasons. And we don't have an established intentional set of pathways to bring people back into integrating in society. So it's no coincidence that even when you look at the homeless population at large, we've seen a shift in the nature of the homeless population. As far as who's becoming homeless, why they're becoming homeless, and the fastest growing population of homeless right now in our region are folks that are over 65 and have outlived their money, and single parents that are struggling to maintain stability in housing. And so those are the two fastest growing demographics currently as we speak.
I just wanted to ask a quick question about that demographic. The single parents, do you have any breakdown on how many of those single parents are actually coming from domestic violence or domestic abuse situations? Do you have any information on that too?
No hard statistics. That part is a much more challenging statistic to get, though it's anecdotally well known that there's a big correlation between domestic violence and people fleeing from housing situations. And it's not just single parents, but there is a lot of known cases of single parents that are fleeing domestic violence situations and don't have stable shelter, and so end up going from place to place. And because our systems of shelter, the way they're set up, also don't have a welcome place for those folks that flee immediately, a lot of them have to go out on the street. Right now, our shelters don't often have facilities set up to hold minors and parents together. And there's also criteria around how long you've been homeless before you can qualify to get on a waiting list, because the demand is so backed up. So there's a lot of folks that are not able to, get into those support systems that are available because there is such a demand for them.
So how are we going to change that, Ozzie?
Thank you for asking. There's a lot of things we've got to do, and there's a lot of organizations that want to do something. There's neighborhood associations, there's individuals, there are church groups, you name it, that are frustrated now by wanting to do something and not knowing how to even begin to make an impact. So one of the first things that I'm going to do as leader is begin to bring all of the resources together to understand how they are set up to serve and create a central referral point so that everybody knows where they can send someone that's going to be able to evaluate comprehensively what the kind of needs are and be able to start referring them to places that are best suited for them. Because we have such a diversity of people. We have mental health issues, addiction issues. We do have the trauma of domestic abuse, even sometimes the trauma of living outside and things that could occur outside. So we have those sorts of things that are being navigated. We have veterans that are back from service that have post-traumatic stress disorder and are still having to address, navigating life here on the streets of Portland, Oregon. So we need a way to bring people to a referral point. So I think the city owes it to everybody out there to be able to create that. Now, the second thing I want to do is actually put a physical location to this. And I want to start designating sites where we are going to be bringing those referral points as well as a few basic services. This is the hard part because everybody's nervous about having people in setting up shops, those people in my neighborhood. And this is where we have to acknowledge something really important here. The issue we have is affecting many people. It could even affect us. Our pandemic right now is an example of how health, and maybe if you end up going to an ER, if you end up getting, who knows what's going to happen right now with who's getting covered for what, who's going to get hospital bills after all of this. But what we have seen is one of the big reasons people become homeless can be hospital bills and those sorts of things falling back on ruining your credit and not letting you get that next lease or being stuck in a housing unit that is unhealthy for you because you can't qualify for another lease. Those sorts of conditions are strapping people, and we have to have solutions. So on top of the referral source, I'm going to find those sites. I'm going to work with organizations, church groups. There's so many out there with land and an interest in helping. So once we've got those pieces, the final piece that is going to help really activate our community is going to be the definition of an actual use standard. Right now, things like if you heard that news, there was an article in the summer about a soup kitchen that was getting set up in Directors Park like once a week. And after months of doing this, the city showed up and shut them down because they didn't have a permit. I don't know if you guys saw that article, but it made a big
It's happened to me personally. So they don't like it when you don't have a permit, but when you want to just help somebody, you're apparently not allowed to.
Right. And yet they're not enabling you in any way to kind of set it up to make that possible. So that's what I want to change. There's so many people that want to help. I want the city to stop being the you got to have a permit, you can't do this until folks, and turn them into, I'm so glad you want to help. What can I do to make this the safest, most straight up legit thing that we can do? Because we need heroes like you in this world. That's the difference.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say all of that. You pretty much described exactly what I would say to people who ask me the same question. And I'm not running for mayor. What you just said is almost exactly my plan as far as making the change. And yes, it seems overwhelming for people, but it is possible. And you can't do it by yourself. So we do need all these little soldiers that are just as passionate, and it could be anybody of all kinds of walks of life. It's just being passionate about making this kind of change. But it's going to take all of us to do that because one person can't do it. But we do have to make that plan. We do have to educate ourselves. The answer is in the question, how do you help the homeless? The answer is in the question, you help them. You help these people. When you talk about helping people, you have to realize that they have their own deck of cards that got dealt to them. So it's a different circumstance for each person. It's a different addiction. It's a different mental illness. It's depression. It's all of these things factor in, or post-traumatic stress syndrome. All of these things are a factor. So how do we help the homeless? We help them. And we have to figure out how to do that. And you're correct on centralizing a place for people to go. to offer their help, because there are definitely people out there ready to help, but we've got to have a central place for them to go to where they can focus like, hey, this is how I can help. Let's put you in this department because that's going to be the most efficient, right?
Yeah, and I think having a clear goalpost is important. So here's the one I've laid out. If we can get this right, if we can activate and mobilize the collective will of people to be helpful, we can actually end having people camping randomly in the streets. And that's what I want. I believe it's not the best answer, and it's not compassionate just to say, you're hard up, I'm going to leave you be. Because that attitude has taken us now to a place that we have gone beyond compassion into, I think, a place that I don't think any of us feels is the ideal scenario. And it's not helping. I say, really, guys, like this, the opportunity to roll up our sleeves, to see these people as people, give them a pathway to lift themselves up. But for us to be intentional in setting that up and let them, take those steps, that's what we owe to society. And by doing so, and by using our design community and being intentional about these sites, we could create something that is dignifying. It's not blight. It's not ugly. It's not just a hodgepodge of tarps. It's not, some Dust Bowl Depression era shanty town that makes everybody feel bad and, makes their stomach turn when they pass by it. It could be something dignifying that shows these are people that are lifting themselves up. These are people that are willing to do something to empower themselves to be better able to be part of society. And I want to do that. And that's why I'm thinking about this not in the lens of let me pass a tax and let me save them because they saved me. I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm saying we have an opportunity to recognize that this can work better. And there's a lot of people out there that want to contribute. It makes us feel individually good when we give somebody something. There's a sort of a quiet, selfish pleasure that comes from giving. And that's human. And so we tap that human nature by empowering people to give. I think that it doesn't need to be in tax. And so I say it this way because it's so important to tap into that collective will.
Yeah, it's about building confidence, making them assets to a neighborhood rather than them being an eyesore to a neighborhood. And there's a way to make that happen. That actually leads me into another question. We're kind of running out of time, but I did want to kind of tap into a little bit about this. What are your thoughts about decriminalizing drugs right now? Let's just start there.
Well, I grew up in the war on drugs, and I grew up to see the war on drugs as a war on my community, first and foremost. So the concept of decriminalizing drugs has been something that has been high on my mind for my entire life, because that shifts our idea away from you are a problem on society. I've seen that war on drugs get abused too many ways as a power system. So I think shifting it away from that model towards one where we are essentially treating folks. It's a health issue. It's a mental health issue. It's an emotional health issue. It's a physical health issue. I think bringing it back into that healthcare world is a much better place. The justice model is problematic. It dehumanizes people. It subjugates communities. It creates a huge profit margin on industries that we cannot make go away no matter what laws we pass. And I have huge problems with it. How's that?
Yeah, no, that's well, it kind of goes into, well, right now, this year in 2020, they're hitting hard specifically in Portland to. There's a couple different bills that are on the table. One is to decriminalize all natural. So, I mean, this includes, well, weed's already there, but this includes mushrooms, ayahuasca, organic psychedelic things. But to specifically kind of go in, and then there's the other one that's going into the Psy 2020 campaign, which is more focused, I do believe, on the getting treatment involved with magic mushrooms for trauma patients, for depression. So what are your thoughts on that future for Portland, because it's definitely already on the table?
Yeah, I think it's a really good step in the right direction. As an ecologist, it seems very presumptuous to me to think that we can make a plant illegal. The plant doesn't ask permission to exist. And it's kind of a little bit silly to me to think about that, just to blanket make something illegal that lives in the world. There's no living organism that is illegal or legal by its existence. That's my philosophy. But specifically to the policies that you're describing, I think, first of all, I think that they're a step in the right direction. I do believe that we need to create opportunities for starting to better understand the applications of the psilocybin family. And there are many. There's a lot of empirical evidence throughout time. There are actual applications now that you could see in mainstream society that people are discussing, but we don't have the rigor yet in place to really start using it in a communicable way. It's still a very kind of in Mexico, we call it curandero. It's kind of like the shaman, the healer kind of model. There's folks that know magic. It's a magic world. It's not a science world yet, but there is science behind it. There's neuroscience, psychology behind all of that. It's just we have not translated it for ourselves to understand it in that lens. So I think being able to go through that translation process is valuable to us. I think that's great that we're thinking about it that way. But I have one more idea on top of all of that. Going back to being able to help homeless and being able to provide, support systems, the psilocybin story represents an interesting opportunity here, because part of my idea in helping the community has been to establish a community-wide community service program, and that would be one of the mechanisms that folks without an address and without a mailbox could use to participate in doing like small tasks, day labor tasks, and making some money. That is an idea that includes things like habitat restoration, of course, like maintaining parks, cleaning up trash, cleaning up the Johnson Creek, waterbed for things that have floated along, as well as maintaining food pantries and starting community gardens. So inside of that one, I see the psilocybin as a fantastic outlet for food pantries to have psilocybin producing on site that they're teaching people to do. They're helping to process it, cultivate it, dry it, grind it, put it in capsules, make the tinctures, all the things that lead us to a product supply line. And this becomes a mechanism that starts to bring funding sources to the food system. Because and I know there's going to be a lot of dough associated with that industry. And I'd say I don't want it to run amok the way cannabis did. We have an opportunity within the state of Oregon in the Pacific Northwest where mycology happens to be one of those natural assets that we are uniquely positioned to thrive on, that no few other parts on planet Earth can say, frankly. In fact, we are the best mycological paradise on planet Earth. I'm not sure you were aware of that, but it's not for nothing. Yeah. So, going back to what I was mentioning with what other cities are doing and kind of trying to figure out what industries we're positioned to, that one is huge. And if we could figure out a way to create a system that brings community benefit from this amazing natural resource, we have an opportunity of not just kind of setting up the shop, creating the policy, and then watching corporate America land and, who knows what happens with the money. There's a mechanism right there, and it can turn around money quickly because, mushrooms grow faster than rabbits.
I mean, it's a great place to be, where I think that right now with what's happening with the coronavirus and building our immune systems and tapping into the possibilities of what different kinds of mushrooms can do for us. It's what they were doing before, like when there was the Indian tribes, they were doing mushrooms. They were figuring all this stuff out. So I think that it's a unique time right now for sure to introduce more studies about psilocybin and all the different kinds of mushrooms actually that are available for us as humans to build our immune system. And it's not just our immune systems. It's like building the bees' immune systems, like Paul Stamets, just came out with, he just discovered a mushroom that builds the immune system of a bee, which we really need right now. So there's definitely things happening in that world which are going to help benefit a lot of different people.
Ozzie, I wish you could see me because I'm really doing a happy dance over here. I mean, all of your ideas and your visions mirror exactly where my head goes. It ties psilocybin and not only psilocybin but mushrooms, mycology in with the answer to stop enabling homeless people to live the way that they're living right now. And all of your answers, all of your ideas just so seem to dovetail with each other and magically make this city what I think it needs to be, can be, and should be. And so I guess I know we're getting to where we need to be ending this. So we started with inclusion. And I guess I want to ask you, how do you see all of this and inclusion working together? What are your kind of like final thoughts on that?
Thanks. Well, I'm running for office, and in a big way, part of this is because I feel like I have a vision I want to communicate. I have something to say to the city that isn't so much what I want to say to it as much as what I feel like it needs to hear. And so much of what I've communicated is really a reflection of what I see us wanting, but we have a difficult time connecting. So I bring that in a great part. But the other side of it is really feeling this yearning to be included, because as a Latino, as a Spanish speaker, and now as a father who had to give my son the talk about 2 years ago when he hit puberty, all of a sudden hitting that glass ceiling, that glass hallway, as a person of color in a city that hasn't fully learned to see people of color, especially professionals of color, as someone that they could take, seriously, or maybe even listen to, that had something to contribute to enrich the city. Feeling that not just myself, but my children, my wife, and my friends, many of whom have tried to get jobs here, and had to find jobs elsewhere. I feel like there is this need to have representation coming forward that is not just, clamoring for a seat at the table and trying to essentially, bring in, now it's my time to bring my issues to the table. But someone that can show all of Portland that, you know what, people of color are also a huge array of voices. We come from all sorts of lived experiences, and the more we could start experiencing one another, the more we're going to have the ability to include and leverage each other. I come from that place where I felt like my voice wasn't always welcome. I was an odd voice in the room. Yet I've managed, by working my tail off, to get into systems, close. I was the first Latino to hold my position at my architecture firm, the first one at the construction firm where I was the diversity director. I was the sustainability director for the architecture firm. That was a big role. I oversaw global operations, and I was a Latino, that was me. I'm the TriMet board member and the first Latino there as well. None of those things were like me. My Latino-ness is hardly the part of the conversation that preceded me getting there, or that is even associated with me performing my job. Yet I get to be myself in those places. The fact that I am Latino, but that's not the reason I'm there, is a really powerful instrument for starting to show that representation comes to talk about all sorts of topics. I'm as comfortable talking about sustainability as the role of arts and culture in our city, as well as the roles of immigration or anything that people would think this is what Latinos should be talking about. And I think that it's important to be able to walk into these venues, the debate stage for a mayoral race, and be able to walk in and show that the fact that I'm Latino has hardly anything to do with the fact that I'm talking about sustainable design. But when it comes time to recognizing that we're trying to create green jobs for the disenfranchised, I come from a place where I say, yes, when it gets to the moment of talking to that child in Rosa Parks Elementary whose parents only speak Spanish, when we're trying to tell them about the green jobs industry, I am going to be able to bring a much closer bridge for that child to feel compelled to enter the industry than somebody who doesn't come from my background. And that's the part of representation that is really difficult for us to recognize when we are saying, I am an inclusive person, but I am open. I don't hear anyone saying I don't see color anymore, but stuff like that. That to me is the personal aspect of inclusion. Is every time I've gone out to a debate, to a forum, a high school career fair, inevitably, especially now, it happened when I was just there as an architect, but especially now that I'm showing up as a candidate for mayor of a city, the largest city in Oregon, it just melts my heart when I have a young Latino who will come to me after a debate or something and just go, wow, like I would have never imagined I didn't know you were running. I wasn't expecting this. And, it fills them so much. And it reminds me of how important representation is. And even though I know I don't get to represent everybody, I don't decide who I represent, I know how important representation is. So when I walk in, I'm walking in knowing that I need to fill my blind spots. I don't get to say now I get to represent all Latinos even, but I'm here to do my best part about broadening the palette of representation. And I'm going to fill my cabinet with a bunch of people that don't seem to belong together. That's how my campaign team is already formed. We look like I don't know. It's like an intergenerational village people. It's like
Oh, Ozzie, that's
the great generation. But that's what I feel like when I want to assemble a cabinet. I'm not just looking for, my policy analyst and my press secretary. I'm looking for people that are coming at this world from a very different place than me, and I want to fill my blind spots by bringing people that are from a very different spot, and I want to fill those people's blind spots by helping create a support system around them that is different than them. So yeah, I'm gonna have I'm gonna say that I'm gonna have a diverse group of people, not because it looks good, but because that's the way I know how to kick the most ass.
I love that, Ozzie.
Yeah, I'm with you on that for sure. Thank you for sharing that moment with us. When you experience different things in your life and you gain more empathy for people, and you've lived that kind of life, it opens your mind and your heart to all the possibilities and to be able to inspire people. I mean, to take action. And that's a good way to wrap this up, you guys, is to take action in making change.
I have one more observation that I want to put out there before we wrap this up. Ozzie, I just want to say thank you for being you. You are a visionary, and I can appreciate that more than you can know. And not only are you a visionary, but you have a gift to articulate that vision to where others can see it and will follow you. So I felt on my heart that I had to say that. And whether you win this election or not, I know that you are going to affect change in this city, and I want to be on your team and proud to support you. And hopefully we can continue to work together and continue this journey to help change this planet.
Naomi, thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate you saying that, and I feel like I want to put this voice to good use. I want to put my heart, my mind, everything I've studied to the most benefit, and I've always chased impact. So I feel like, luckily, my mission in this life doesn't depend on a business card to have a specific title. I feel like we as Portland have an opportunity to do something amazing. And I know that by electing the first Latino who happens to have a background in climate science, we're going to get attention. And what we do with that attention is what I think can help us really step into the next chapter of our story in a really good light. I'm rolling the dice on our city to take a chance and choose me as their next mayor. So this podcast, your willingness to hear me out, to give me space to say this is valuable. I hope to get this out as much as possible, because getting myself to be heard is one of the limiting factors that can keep people from having the confidence to vote for me. So I'm trying to get that out there, and I really appreciate your help.
Yeah, we're definitely here to help you, Ozzie, and we really, really appreciate you spending the time with us. We could go on and on. We have a million questions for you, but we're going to wrap it up for the night. Well done tonight, you guys. Thank you for all that you do. We're definitely all on the same team, guys. It does require action from all of us to really make change. So let's start doing our homework, guys. Let's open up our minds and our hearts, and let's build a global community of nice holes. All right. Thank you, Ozzie, and thank you, Lori, for joining us tonight on the Real Shit podcast. Don't forget to continue to do your homework on who's running for office in your city, how we can really make change. We're at a crucial point in our lives right now as a global community, and we're talking global, to make change. It's going to make us or break us. And so look within yourselves to pull out the strength that we have, guys, because we really can make this a better place. Is there anything else you guys would like to add before we go?
Stay home and wash your hands, people.
And thanks for having me. Visit my website at ozzieforpdx.org. That's OZZIE, the number 4, pdx.org.
Awesome. And you guys, obviously, if you have any questions for him, we can forward them to Ozzie as well. And if you guys do want to buy your nice old t-shirts, you can do that at therealshit.net. All right, guys, don't forget to...
Be a nice old